Hey everyone, Brian Kelly here. Welcome to another episode of the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. I hope you've been enjoying the show, and I want to tell you about an opportunity to support church planting and church planters. Go to cgn.org, click on donate. You'll see a drop down for church planting. I'm going to put the link in the show notes, but this is a great way to practically support the work of the ministry, support church planting, support church planters. We're going to see that all those funds go right out onto the field. So just wanted to tell you about that opportunity. And now let's get into the episode. All right, welcome to the Cultivate Church Planting Podcast. And today we have Billy Almaguer. How do you say it again? I had a problem.
Yeah, I know Almaguer.
Almaguer. I was going to say that. So Billy was on a couple episodes ago, and I'd had trouble pronouncing the last name then. Although I didn't this time, but I should have committed. You know, it's one of those things.
Committed. Just go all in.
Yeah, it's like one of those things where you meet new people at the church, and then you see them the next week, and you know their name, but you kind of you don't want to mess this up.
You don't. Yeah, and that's you just say that's the danger when you're church planting. It's like you got to not only be an expert in all things church, but then the memorization of names. So it's a tough one. Brother and sister are your favorite names, so seem to work out the most.
That's how you know you're a seasoned veteran, when you know the brother and sister trick.
Yep, exactly.
Awesome. Well, Billy's here today, and we're going to be talking about something. It's funny how this got set up. Let me just introduce this real quick. So Billy and his church, Awaken City Church, have been in a transition time. They moved from a movie theater into a school. And so when I saw that, I've been following along on social media, on the Awaken City Church Instagram page. And I thought to myself, you know what? This is actually something that we need to do as a church. We're outgrowing our facility, and the landlord's raising the rent at the same time. So it's kind of one of those situations where we're thinking, all right, what's next? And it does just so happen that we have the opportunity to go into a school, a high school. It's a Christian high school, so it makes it a little bit more helpful for us because a lot of our family's kids go there. But nice. I saw that Billy and his team have done this, and I thought I texted him right away. I said, hey, because I actually texted you after I saw the cool the signs and the different graphics and the ideas that you had, and I texted Billy and I said, hey, can I give you a call and you can tell me kind of what you did and how you did it and where you got the stuff? I have all these questions. And he's like, sure. And so I thought, you know what? I'm probably not, chances are I'm not the only one out there that's thinking about going into a school, using a school for a church facility. And it's been done before. It's been done successfully by a lot of churches. I text Billy. I'm like, hey, would you mind recording this so we could get the message out to a lot of the other guys that might be thinking about it? So.
Yeah, certainly hope this helps bless some people. Maybe you're thinking about it or you're having to go to school, whatever the case is. But definitely some good lessons I think we can pass along to others.
Yeah, totally. And just for those of you who don't know Pastor Billy, he is in St. Augustine, Florida. And you've been in Florida for quite a while, right, Billy?
Yeah, I mean, I moved here after grad school, so 99 actually, and then spent about 5-6 years in North Carolina, and then came down to St. Augustine the early part of 2015 to plant, and then we launched in 2016. So been here a good while in Florida most of my time. I grew up in Texas, but got to Florida and spent a lot of time here so far.
Nice.
Enjoying it.
And you went through COVID and everything with the church.
Yeah, it's great. We launched in the movie theater. I'd done church plants before in schools, and nothing wrong with schools. But when we were doing that down in South Florida, that was like in the cafetorium. I'm not sure what they would call it, but it was almost like, you smell French fries, and it's like, man, I don't want to smell that anymore. And so we moved to St. Augustine and got connected with a lot of pastors in the area. Just started asking around about kind of what was available, and I kept looking at the theater. I'm thinking, I'd like to just go into the movie theater. It'd work out. And so we spent 442 Sundays in the movie theater from launch
Man.
until we moved over. Yeah, so a lot of time in the movie theater.
So you traded French fries for popcorn.
Yeah, we had, I mean, a lot of popcorn. And so, for the church planter, I mean, the movie theater really worked out well for us. We got to store everything there. It was a good working relationship. And, some people, if you put production value in kind of the haze in the atmosphere, well, that was our popcorn machines that provided that for us. And so it was a good environment. And, but it was certainly, they went through a season where they were doing a lot of renovation. They were doing like the nice loungers, leather seats and all that, which was cutting the capacity of our theater, which was 298 seats down to about 100. And so for us, we're like, man, we don't really want to go to 2 and 3 services. Like it wasn't going to work. And I had been connected with a lot of churches through a network we have up here called the Collective Network. And kind of the whole point in there is just kind of provide some soul care for pastors. And as part of that, connected to a lot of schools. And so going to the school wasn't on the radar, but I was already connected with the school, trying to get other church planters coming to the area into it. And probably around Christmas time this year is when we got the news from the theater saying, oh yeah, we're going to be redoing the theaters. And at first I was like, well, that's great. We're going to get upgrades. And then I was like, wait, are we upgrading seats? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, we're cutting capacity. That's going to be a challenge. So we've kind of been praying, that God would kind of show us the perfect steps. Mm-hmm. And we'd already had the relationship with the school and really wasn't thinking about going there in all honesty. We were kind of looking at other options and nothing was just working out. But then just a chance to build community at a school that has not had a church plant in probably 15, 16 years here. Man, the Lord just kind of kept putting that on the heart, and it's been amazing so far. I'll just say that. I'll share a little bit more as we get into it, but it's kind of the story so far, just being integrated with the teachers and the community. It's been really amazing to kind of see how God opened those doors for us in the school.
Awesome. Let's start with that because, I personally, we've planted a church in Bellingham, Washington, and mm-hmm. there was a season when we were in a middle school, and it has its challenges as we'll talk about, but we really did love it. But one of the things that I've always been taught and that I kind of have practiced is what you're talking about, building those relationships. Mm-hmm. And why don't you go ahead and talk about the importance of being a blessing to the school or even theater, wherever you're renting from someone else. How does that work out practically to be a blessing to those groups?
Yeah, and I think, as church planners, obviously we get hyper-focused on teaching the whole Sunday experience, but the other 6 days of the week is relationship building. Mm-hmm. We don't ever stop building relationships, and so if we're not maintaining and really taking care of those relationships, especially in a place where we're leasing or whatever, then I think those are some opportunities missed. Even in a theater, I mean, we would throw the staff Christmas parties and do things like that. Just because we were there, we wanted to be a blessing to them. We wanted to help them out as much as possible. We wanted to leave it better than we found it. Just all the things you would say. Yeah. And I think for us kind of getting into the school, kind of the same thing. We were already integrated in with schools in our community. So when I found out that, the principal there, he says, man, we just really want a church here. And I was like, well, let me help you with that. I didn't realize that was going to be us. That was about a year ago. And I've been trying to find them a church planner and, talking with different church planners come to the area. It's like, hey man, this is a great school. It's got 520 seats. They're redoing the auditorium. It's going to be an amazing, opportunity. And then it looked like I ended up talking with the principal, and I was like, hey, can we think about maybe, having a dialogue about us getting in here? And the cool thing about having the relationship part is that wasn't the first conversation we had. He already knew kind of on my heart to partner with them, even if I wasn't getting something out of it, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I think as church planners, we always got to remember that, we're even witnessing, we're a witness for the Lord, even on that business transaction side, the contract negotiation side. But because of that relationship, it certainly made it, I think, a lot easier for us because they came in, they discounted it for us. They did everything they could to make it as easy as possible for us to be there and want to be there. And we do, even down to the storage of equipment. They've been very gracious and it's been a good thing so far.
Man, you're talking about all these things that I want to kind of dig deeper into because I know that our listeners have questions about it. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, to be a little bit selfish, I have questions about because we're thinking of making that move. But did you say that the guy or the person in charge wanted a church into the school?
Yeah, so we're fortunate in St. Johns County in Northeast Florida, where the school district has there's a lot of believers that are part of the school district, the executive staff and such, and so there's a big push and has been ever since I've been here the past 8 years for churches to be in schools. They want to have that kind of partnership. Because I agree with them too. I mean, if we could just be the church in the community, then I think we could help solve a lot of the problems that our community is facing. And so the school district recognizes that. When I first got here, we were going to the superintendent office once a month. We pray with the superintendent of the school district. And so that's still ongoing. And that's just been something that's been kind of the core of kind of the leadership there. And so that's opened up a lot of doors for us. And as such, it's opportunity. People want to know that you care. And so it's great to be able to throw a breakfast, for school staff when they're coming together for the beginning of the year. But as we did that this year for the first time at Pedro Menendez High School, one of the staff members came up to me and she said, this is the first time I've ever been able to just enjoy the breakfast because I've always had to put it on. We've always had to figure out how we're going to pay for it. He's like, man, this church has just been a blessing already. And I know we hadn't even started here yet. And so you just get and think about that relational side and building it. It's like, the conversations that you're having this year may not, come to some sort of like productive fruition until a few years down the road. And so these conversations we've been having with the schools and a heart to serve them has been going on for years, ever since we've been here. But right now we're kind of reaping the reward of that relationship that we've built over the years, just partnering with them. Schools calls up, hey, we've got a family that they don't have a place to live. They've been evicted. It's like, hey, we got them. We'll get them a place to live, for a week. Or, hey, we got students that don't have X, Y, and Z. We'll get them there in 2 days. So we were just being the church, being someone they can count on. So that really helped us a lot in this season.
Yeah, you want to be a blessing to the place that you're renting, and you also want to be a blessing after you leave. You don't want to. I remember there's that scene in, I don't know if you've seen What About Bob, where he's on the bus and he's just kind of acting weird, and and then he gets off the bus at his destination, and everybody's kind of sitting in the far back, and he's in the front by himself, and they all start cheering when he leaves.
Yep. That and I know this has nothing to do with church planting, but that right there is one of my favorite movies. And when I need to unplug after a hard season, it's usually that movie or Elf. It's one of the that is a great movie. So classic.
So for all church planters, need to watch What About Bob?
Yeah, that's such a great one. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What about
speaks
Bob?
To the heart. Speaks to the heart. Absolutely.
Well, I think we could probably go on and on with some quotes from the movie, but just go watch it. But yeah, that scene where he gets off, everybody cheers because he just didn't. They didn't like him on the bus, so we want to be. We want to get off, and they're like, "Oh, you have to leave already."
Yeah.
So all right. In practicalities, you had the relationship, and that's obviously ideal. I mean, what a great message to just be in the community, not so much for what you can get out of people or institutions like schools, but for what you can contribute as the church. What would you say to a church planter who's maybe looking at using a school or similar venue? When I say similar venue, I'm thinking of places like YMCAs, Boys and Girls Clubs, even some libraries, things like that, where they rent space, public space, to whomever. So if you don't have that relationship built up already, like what would you say are some of the first steps to take in trying to establish that?
Yeah, I mean, schools obviously being the easiest because they are a point in the community. And really it's, if you stop by a principal's office or, leadership at a school or any organization and as a church, like, hey, we're a church, we're coming into town. We don't really necessarily have a place to meet yet, but we would love to serve you in some tangible way. So I'm giving you something, but I'm not expecting to get something out of it. I may at some point ask, on the contractual side, but right now we're trying to give you something. To me, that's the biggest deal. And I think for us, being a part of church plants in schools before, I personally went into some of these schools, and I'm sure you've done these things too. And I went up to the principal and the staff, and I'm like, hey, I'll take your hardest kids, the kids that are like, like one step away from going to juvenile detention. Okay. And I'm going to walk them through, what does it mean to be like a leader? What does that mean? And of course I know, when you get into schools, you have to be invited in to kind of speak into it from a Christian perspective. chances are you'll find a teacher that will open that door for you. But even if they don't, you can still speak of the principles that we see from the Word of God. And so when you go into it with that heart, whether it be a school, a YMCA, some kind of community focus, they want to see, what is the value to the community? And I think as church planners, sometimes we can get so hyper-focused on ourselves that we want to find the value to ourselves first.
Yeah.
And I think if we lay that to the side and it's like, hey, yeah, we'll find a place, Lord's going to provide, but we just want to serve you. And as we got here, it was almost like, hey, we're not launching for 7 or 8 months. We just want to serve you. What do you mean? Well, we'll come paint, we'll clean up, we'll do whatever. And that just really goes a long way. And when you actually show up and do it, that's the beginning of building the relationship. And I think people are just, blown away. This might be a word for someone, because I know as a church planner, money, you're always looking for Benjamins and how you're going to pay for the rent and stuff like that. But even stories within our county, there's been schools with churches in there that the churches, as they're getting started, were a little short. The school said, hey, if you could just paint and provide the volunteers, then we'll get you a month or 2 covered. I mean, it's a blessing, right? And it's because you're showing up, you're consistent, and you just have a general, just as hard to serve them. And I think, to me, you just have to get in there and figure out. It's like any relationship. They're all a little bit different, but I think as you get in there and talk through the organization, whether it's a school, YMCA, or whatever, you're going to find they have some tangible needs. And again, you just serving people goes against the culture a little bit, because most people want to be served. But once you just are consistent and show up, I think people will finally eventually open up and say, oh yeah, well, here's a couple things. And great, you can jump in and kind of get in that space.
Nice. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when it comes to public schools, Christian schools, obviously, okay, they have a church, but even public schools, I know this is true in Florida, and it was true up in Washington where we were. Many of the states, every district is going to be a little bit different. They're going to have their different leadership and management, but it's a lot of people think schools won't let churches in because separation of church and state. They're kind of like, well, you can't, because we all know you can't just go in a school and start preaching the gospel at the assembly, although many have done and will do that. But what they don't realize is that public schools, many of the districts are very open to, and some of them, like you're talking about, they want churches to come and rent these venues. It's not during school hours. I think that's the confusion. Right. You're renting a facility, and it's interesting because here in our county, we're in Florida as well, down a little bit south of where Billy is, and there's a whole website that has venue rentals for the different schools, and it literally advertises on there, practices, Boy Scouts, Girl, whatever it is. And then it says places of worship. So if you, you can go right in the website and apply for that. Yep. However, on a couple of them, even here in Florida, the Christian state, you had Texas, you got Texas and Florida.
Yeah. And I think it's a little bit easier in some places other than not. I mean, I had a buddy who planted up in New Hampshire, and I forgot how many different places he was in, but I mean, he was in a bar, he was in the opera house, he was in all kinds of different places. But the thing that he stayed consistent. He just stayed serving people, and finally God just opens the right place in the door. But I would say, if don't discount a place, whether it's privately held, whether it's publicly held, whatever, to approach the leadership, and kind of the leadership for that facility with just a heart to serve them. And I think it just opens doors. Yeah. Because one thing that we know, obviously, whether it's a school, whether it's the YMCA or wherever you're meeting, that hard times hit everyone the same, whether you're a believer or not. And so as a church, we have a way to mobilize and really, get behind, helping other people, because we see it just modeled. We see it modeled in the Word of God that as believers, kind of one of the things that we would want to do is just be able to be the hands and feet and to serve people in that way, because that's just kind of at the core of who we are. And so that goes well with everyone. There's not a person on the planet that doesn't want to be served in some way. They may be thinking that you have this ulterior motive, but if you're just simply doing it because you just love them as a person,
they can see that.
And opens up many doors.
Yeah, that's good. When we were here, it's funny because I called around to a few different schools, and we've had a hard time finding a place. A lot of times churches will go in a strip mall and rent a space in a strip mall. And here in our county, we had a really difficult time because apparently there's a law on the books that was made a long time ago to protect churches, where they said you can't you can't open a bar or any place that serves alcohol within a certain 100 yards of a church. So that law is still there. So anytime we go to a strip mall or somewhere like that with a restaurant around or bar space, the landlord would say, no, we can't rent the churches because you'll be too close to establishments that serve alcohol. So it's kind of a weird thing.
There are ways around that for maybe some of the listeners. Like, I'm bivocational, so I do engineering as well and planning. There are ways around that. And if you go to, like, in a lot of cases, the landlord of the facility and just say, as a church, you're going to sign off on that, you're okay with that. There are ways to get around usually that. That's just to kind of shut it down, because it's easier to say no, than to say yes and then have an issue down the road. But there are ways around it depending on the relationship that you have with the potential landlord, and coming to them kind of from a planning perspective. Hey, I spoke with the engineer and a planner. Mm-hmm. This is how we would do this. And they were like, cool, that's fine. And because I see it happen all the time. I mean, I looked at facilities and they were like, oh no, you can't be 100 feet within what. I was like, you're right. But if we sign off saying we're okay with that, and you have that in documentation, then by the state, they don't care.
Yeah. so interesting. So it's good to know, because what it kind of sounds like what you're saying is a lot of times people are using excuses that they don't really know the details of the laws and so forth.
Yep.
So it's funny, because when we're in Bellingham, which is a real let's just say it's a non-Christian place, especially compared to Florida or the South.
Yeah.
And we would get letters all the time. There was probably a brewery or a medical or a marijuana dispensary on every corner. And we would get letters all the time that says, are you okay with this thing coming in your neighborhood? And we'd always say, yeah, of course. That's just bring the people to us. We don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting that, that's often a kind of an excuse. And I did talk to one lady at a school nearby us here, and she was the director of whatever there in charge of the facility. And she said, no, we can't rent to a school. It's a separation of church and state. And I was like, I had to just kind of politely say, well, actually it's, on your website, and it's, after hours and that sort of thing.
Right.
So, yeah, but that's good. I think the message is don't give up.
Right.
Keep looking. There's so many different options for meeting space.
Yeah. And I would say, to add, kind of to put, kind of a period on the end of that, is just, oftentimes the dreams and the vision that the Lord has placed in your heart as a church planner, you've been running on that bus for a year or so, a lot of times, kind of with where you're landing. And oftentimes the person you're talking to has been running with you for about 10 minutes, especially in terms of talking through space and all that. And so, do your homework, obviously pray through how the Lord would be a part of that situation, but then also pray, and be prepared to, how are you going to be a blessing, to the place you're going into. And again, I think just on one of the things that we did, just getting into the school, was I came in not with just what we were doing Sunday, but I laid out kind of a year 1, 2, 3 kind of approach of how we as a church were wanting to engage, but certainly wanted that to be a two-way conversation. And the staff were really excited about that.
Nice.
So we were thinking outside of just Sundays and thinking through, hey, how can we be a bigger blessing to the school, in our case, more than just on Sundays.
Yeah. So let's walk through your process. You've been meeting in the theater. They're doing the renovations, decreasing seat size. How many seats did you have in your sanctuary in that?
We had right at 300, so 298 seats, dropping to right at 100 seats. Nice, comfy seats.
Big drop.
Yeah. But I mean, they're nice, wide, leather loungers. I mean, it's pretty interesting.
You don't want it too comfortable during a Sunday morning.
No, it's way too comfortable. I'm thinking this is going to be a problem. We're going to have to go somewhere. And, we had we loved it acoustically. Everything was just great. We could live stream out of there. Children's ministry was a little bit more of a challenge because we had to have them in some of the smaller theaters. And so we didn't have as much space. And so if there was a box that wasn't fully checked for us, it would have been children's. But, for the most part, it worked really well. We had a lot of people, depending on the weekend of what movie, people would come dressed up as whatever. So you never knew who you're going to get showing up to the movie theater. And sometimes they may change their mind and go to church. So we had some great people, but kind of walking through that and realizing that, I was part of a church that, we met in a 100-seat facility. And then we went to 3 services, and it's a lot of work when you're doing 3 services.
Now. We're at 2, but it's still a lot of work.
it's a lot that just and then your church feels disconnected. And so as a pastor, you feel like that's going to be disconnected. And that's not what you want at that size church. You want people to kind of be that small to medium, like you want them to feel connected, not disconnected. And so that was just really weighing in on the heart. And so just kind of, considering it, prayerfully considering it. And we looked at all the options available, and we're like, well, the Lord wants to go to, 2 services or 3 services, whatever it's going to be, then we're going to have to be there. But, this relationship with the school was there, had conversations, and it checked all the boxes of being the right place for us. And just as elders and as our team, elders, staff, and trustees and all that just kind of prayed through, it was just the right move. It seemed like a right fit. And I think for us, the thing that really kind of in my heart, and I'm not saying this has to be for everyone, but for me, it was just the idea of building on the community, not changing. So we went into it with, again, 442 weekends. We weren't trying to take Awaken City Church in its current form down to the theater. We saw this as God evolving the church into what he wanted it to be that next season. So we're relaunching, still the same church, same thing, same everything, but we're relaunching because it's a new opportunity. It's a new season for us. And so for us, that was kind of the thing for me that the Lord just really kind of put on the heart. Like there's just community down there. There's people that need to hear the gospel that are down there that maybe aren't connected. And that's really just sat with my heart and just sat well with me and just really kind of was the inspiration behind it all.
Nice. Okay. I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here, a very niche situation that we are currently dealing with. Okay. I want you to kind of address it. So here's the situation. And our facility right now, we don't have any fellowship area. So the sanctuary is it for seating, fellowship, and everything. We have 2 outbuildings, like portable buildings for children's ministry, and then a side like classroom for nursery kind of thing. So here's our situation. We have about 200 to 250 seats is maximum with, just really packing it in and not really a lot of walking space. So currently we're doing 2 services. Now here in Florida and probably a lot of other places in the summer, the attendance dips down. Our church was growing pretty strong in the spring months, and where we felt like we really need to go to 2 services. We were over 200, every Sunday consistently and growing. That's before summer. So, they say 80% capacity is kind of max of where you want to be, then split up into 2 services or whatever. So we did that. During the summer, attendance dipped down a little bit, and we probably are about a little over 100 average per service, all right, in our lowest kind of season. We're coming back up out of it. There's the thing here called snowbirds that Billy's familiar with, and our listeners may or may not be in there. There are people that literally just go to their home in the Northeast, New York or Ohio or wherever it is for the summer, and then they come back once it gets too cold there and it's nice and perfect in Florida. So we're entering into that season. So here's a niche kind of curveball little question that probably is just for our church. We'll see if anybody else out, it might be interesting to listen to, whatever. Like I said, this is kind of a selfish podcast episode for me. So now we're meeting we meet with the elders and the ministry leaders. What do you think about going back to 1 service? Cause they're seeing the summertime crowds, hey, I think we can fit everybody, is kind of the idea, into 1 service. It'll be packed like sardines. And let's go to 1 service just for half of September and October, and then go over to the school. And then the other kind of group says, let's push through, just keep the 2 services. Probably they're gonna fill up because of the snowbirds coming back. We don't know, you never know. So that's kind of our niche situation. What kind of advice would you give?
Yeah, I'll give you an advice and I'll give you a story. Kind of our last Sunday, which we were in the opposite. Anyway, I would say you stay with 2 for a number of reasons. One, that's been advertised. People know that rhythm and flow. And to kind of go back, I get where we need to think about, if that was for forever and always, like you didn't have a plan to kind of get into a facility, then I could see maybe rethinking that. But you are going to get back into the busy season where, great. that's fine. But I would say keep the 2 just because that's an advertised, that's a known time. You don't want to be confusing because if you are going to be going down potentially to 1, once you get into the school, how big is the capacity? How much capacity will you have at the school?
So we will have about 400 seats.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so you're going to be going down to 1 anyway. So that's the flag. That's the point. That's where we're going to. That's your point B. And so for me, I would say that just because there's consistency, there's a rhythm. While yes, you may be down people, maybe even volunteers, I get it. Then we scale back where we scale back.
Yeah.
But
we've
I think
actually
you
scaled
keep the
back
2.
on the children's ministry and did children's ministry at one of the services so that we could have the volunteers for it.
Yep. And I think you do that because, people, it's once you give someone an option and you take it away and it's a disruption, people don't like that pattern disruption. As silly as that may sound, that's the negative if you're going to go down to 1 service. But in the case where you're going to the school, there's a reason because you have the capacity.
Yeah.
So that's a selling point there. You land and you move everybody together. But I don't know if I would do that. So I wouldn't do that now. We were kind of in the opposite where the theater was trying to work with us to keep us in our 300 seat theater basically until we were finished. However, the week of our last week there, that Monday, we get a call. It's like, hey, we want you guys to move to the 100 and whatever seat side. And we're like, well, this sucks. We're not going to move to 2 services. And so in all honesty, what we did, and again, it's an opposite situation. We ended up just doing an online watch party. We opened it up for those that wanted to come. And we closed out our season that way, but we had already committed to staying with 1 service because it made no sense for us to go to 2 for a summer.
I see.
And so I think in your case, I would, if the volunteers were there to finish strong, and I think sometimes that just comes down with the vision and the communication of it. You know what the Lord has communicated, the nuts and bolts of it. But I think as a leadership team, if your team is communicating that, like, hey, there is a line in the sand where we're converging and we're bringing everything back together, that's the line. So we do need to, for the sake of our community, because we have those options, still keep those open and available. That's kind of what my vote would be.
Yeah, that's good. And I totally understand the idea behind what some of the team is saying is that, we don't want to be a fragmented church. You said it yourself. We want to be all together. It's much better having one service versus 2. And that's something that we kind of all agree on. It's just the timing of it. And but yeah, thanks. That's good input.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking that little sidetrack there.
And I would add to that, just again, the way my brain thinks is that, if I'm, and this is the way I thought when I was working in the world and I was serving at the local church, but if I was going to tithe on my time, my working time, let's just say my 40 hours a week or whatever, and I'm going to dump 4 hours into the church and that was all going to be on a Sunday as a volunteer, there's your 2 services. I'm going to serve 1 and attend 1. Yeah. Because I see the value of that. And so I think, again, it's just communicating that and just kind of letting people know the heart behind it. We're not doing it just to bring about pain and a difficult season. No, there's a reason why we're doing this. And we know we want to be in community, but let's finish this season well, this season strong, this season that you're in, until you can get everyone back together.
I love that. I love that idea of tithing the time too. If you're working 40 hours, you're given 4 hours to the church. And that's, you're right. That's 2 services. Attend 1, serve at 1, which is the ideal. And obviously that changes for people, some people, they don't do that or whatever, but yeah, thanks for that. Okay. That's helpful. That's helpful for me. And I'll pass that on to our team, just a little advice as we work through
absolutely.
It. But getting into the school now, some of the things that I saw on your, church website, Instagram. So this is really cool. And I really I'm going to put the link, Instagram's easy to find, but I'll put the link to your website in the show notes. But you guys did this really cool thing where the school is called Pedro
Menendez High School. Yeah.
Pedro Menendez High School.
Yep.
Okay. Another great movie. Napoleon Dynamite. So all of a sudden I see Billy and his whole staff with t-shirts that say, what did it say? Something about
Church at Pedro.
Church at Pedro. Yeah. So they're classic in the movie. They have Vote for Pedro and they all wear the shirts. Yeah. And it was the same font, same shirt, except, it was talking about the church. I love that. And it just kind of gave a fun spin on it because people get scared when you're moving. They need a little bit of
yeah.
comedic relief.
Yeah, I was trying to grow my mustache out. I just can't. I was going to go for the Pedro look, and I'm like, I can't.
You should have shaved off all your hairs and then got the toupee.
Yeah, that would have been funny.
I got hot and I shaved off all my hairs.
Last night I was preparing for the message and shaved my head. But yeah, we wanted to have fun, and we didn't want to just be a name, Awaken City Church. I mean, we're part of the Big C Church in our community and across the world. And so we wanted to make that the focus, that we're being the church at Pedro. We're just an expression of the church at Pedro. We gave the principal the shirt and surprised him with it. He had a good laugh about that. The staff loved it. And we grabbed the domain and everything just to have fun with it. I mean, because we're going to use it. I'm working on a little side note here. Here's some gold here for your listeners.
Okay, good.
One of the things I did was I came into town and I befriended one of the local coffee shops that actually roast beans. And you'll want to do that, because if you can do that as a church, you can score kind of wholesale pricing. So we're paying like right at $6 a bag. Same beans they sell for 20, we're getting for 6. And that's labeled. We get them labeled and all that other stuff. So it works out for us. But we're working on a Pedro specific blend. I don't know what it's going to be called. I don't, but we want to bless the teachers. And the idea is that we want to give them, a bag of coffee to take home for Christmas, with instructions on what to do and things like that. So we're kind of making interactive fun. We're having a lot of fun with the name, but that's the kind of stuff you can do that goes outside of the Sunday.
Yeah.
And using some things like this, it's
man, you need to write all this stuff down, Billy, because we're hitting one after the other. I'm like, man, these are all good.
Yeah. Well, you're recording it, so we're recording it. So
we're recording it. Yeah. We need more details. We're gonna anyway. So let's get to a few more things that I know that our listeners want to know about, and by listeners I mean me included. So when you're going into the school, you've obviously got the auditorium area with the seats. Are the seats built in, or are you setting them up and tearing them down?
No, the seats are built in. They're brand new. Actually, they just replaced them this summer. So built-in seats. They don't squeak. They're all brand new. But just bring WD-40 if they do. It's not a problem. But yeah, brand new seats, brand new flooring. They're redoing the AV audiovisual in the theater next year. So we've walked into a really good situation. And we brought our own stuff, and we told the school, anything that we have you can use. We can send people to run it for you. You just let us know. And that's just been a big blessing. I mean, we've walked into pretty much, a fairly new facility in terms of being renovated. So worked out really well.
Now, when it comes to the children's ministry, how many rooms do you have for the kids? What are the age divisions?
We got 3. So if you can imagine a big rectangular theater, a hallway next to it that connects to the outside, but also to the theater. So when parents are checking in, and we've got signs, one of the things that you wouldn't have been able to see yet, we're still getting all the pictures and all that, videos not processed, but kind of an engaging way, like, hey, kids ministry this way. And then the next sign is like, funds almost here. Just another way to kind of point them to the check-in location. But once they get checked in and kind of in the secure area, we've got 3 rooms that we're using right now, K through 5th, pre-K, and then infants.
Okay.
In our K through 5th and pre-K, K through 5th room, we've got 2 of I think they are 8 by 15 foot walls. So if you can imagine, kind of, you set those in a corner, and right there where the gap would be a media cart that rolls in and rolls out, which, as a church planter, if you've not seen like some of the portable church ministry, we use Church on Wheels. There's probably other places, but there are a lot of affordable options out there. And it makes life so much easier for not only you as the team, staff and all that, but as for your volunteers. And so for us, we kind of got that corner of the room. And then I don't know what you call them, the technical terms, but the round carpets for the kids, we got them themed orange. I call them pepperonis. I don't know what you call them, but like they're just thrown
Are
all
they
over
like
the floor.
the little padded seats that the kids sit on?
Well, no, they're just a little round, I guess, carpet pieces of carpet. That we got them from a company in Canada. They're pretty inexpensive. And, in your show notes, if you want a bunch of I can send you the links to all the stuff we use just because it's the latest and greatest from the past month. But if people are looking for stuff, I can certainly, point you to kind of what we use. But yeah, that kind of makes the inviting environment. So, everyone knows that as a parent, if you're a parent, you're looking for, safe, clean, and fun. And as long as it's checking those boxes, then parents are happy. And so for us, those rooms were designed to kind of accommodate that. So we got the actual band room where the band meets for our largest one. Then we have the chorus room, which is where pre-K is. And then our infants room is kind of in a special, I'm not sure what they call it, but it's the room is kind of a special use room, but it works out really well for us with those three rooms. And so looking at the 519 seats, like the children's will probably be the limiting factor, but we can always use more rooms. We can always move one of the groups over to the cafeteria. So we've got options.
Yeah.
Nothing we have to decide right now.
Yeah. No, that's good. Let's talk about signage too, because that really is eye-catching. You talked about Church on Wheels, and there's a lot of the portable church companies that'll work with you. But how do you go about, for lack of a better word, like transforming the space from school, high school? You know, you got the trophy cabinet and the banners for the, the mascot and all this stuff. How do you transform that as best we can? I mean, we're not going to go in and be Hollywood set directors, but how can we transform that into a church facility?
Yeah, there's a couple of ways. Obviously, one way, and I think the classic approach is pipe and drape, but I never want to see pipe and drape again. It's a lot of work. So for my friends out there that like pipe and drape, man, just blessings to you. You go do that. I mean, I think it's great. I think it's a great way to kind of start with a blank slate. But for me, I'm inherently a little lazy, and I'm like, man, I'm always looking for like the shortcuts.
Well, whatever's going to be the quickest, easiest, and the best. I mean, we don't want to work ourselves to death. Yeah,
and so for us, we ended up using a lot of products from Radiant Printing, and there are other places that do these products, but this one happens to be in Florida. The pastor, there's a pastor of a church. That was his business, Radiant Church, down kind of Lakeland area. Okay. So. But anyway, Radiant Printing. And so on there, again, we use those walls. If you want to transform a space, kind of just a neutral feeling space, or you want to cover something up, why not just use a pop-up wall that takes less than 2 minutes to set up and you're done. And you've got this beautiful graphic that you've designed.
How big are those walls, each of those walls?
Yeah, I think ours, we got 8x15s, we got 8x10s. Yeah, they're good size. And they've held up. I mean, they've, it's funny. The Radiant Printing had featured the church, I think a week or two ago on their Instagram, but I guess they didn't know we moved out of the theater. And so they were showing all of our stuff at the theater. Like, hey, actually we just moved, but
we'll have to do another feature.
Yeah, they'll have to do another feature. But to me, between that and just, again, wayfinding, people like to know where to go and just think signage, of yourself. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things I despise doing is going to like Walmart for any reason. But if I do have to go there, because like, where do you find things? I'm like, I just want to be able to look at a sign and get to where I need to go, as easy as possible. And so I think for me, going to, a church, you kind of want to know where you're going to be, you want to know where you're going, and having those signs up and at it, kind of laid out really, really works out the best. And so for us, when you're kind of when you're coming from the parking lot to the sanctuary, you're going to see, a couple of signs that are giving you really good directions, and we're tweaking it. You're going to kind of, you'll find little cracks, and you're going to kind of figure things out. But again, putting some signage in its location, some signage works well outside, some signage doesn't. I'm a big fan of the big flags, like the teardrop, 15-foot tall flags that go outside too. I think they catch the eye. And lets people know like there's something unique happening there. But you got to do something. You can't just put a band on the stage and think that, I mean, yes, the Lord can bring people, but maybe the Lord will bring more people if you tell them where to go.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, that's good, man. I can't believe we've been talking for almost 45 minutes already. I'm just learning all this stuff. What would be the one or two things that you would share with our listeners that, you can't do without when it comes to going into a school?
When you launch into a school, that right there has notoriety of being a trusted place. Mm-hmm. And as a church planner, people don't know if they can trust you. Again, if you're mobile, you always have this stigma, right? We have this stigma. So capitalize on that. And I'm going to tell probably your listeners to do something which I know probably wouldn't fall in the vein of kind of being the Calvary way, but I think I'm just I learned this from other church planting organizations. But man, we really utilize the mailers, everyday direct mail.
Okay.
I think we sent out 15, 16,000 pieces kind of targeted in areas because we're a church of Pedro. We're letting people know like, hey, Pedro, Menendez High School, the school, we want to come there and be the church. And this is what church is all about. And they can scan and go see, take a test drive and see what that's like. And so capitalize on where you're at and why people would want to go there anyway. People go to that school because their kids are there.
Yeah.
So if you're showing them, you're investing in the next generation, you're pouring into, that next generation, those are key things I think that we want to make sure that we're doing. Again, that's one of the ways that we looked at it. And, I think we've had a lot of people, we can see kind of the metrics, hitting websites and things like that. Like they're wanting to find out more, which is great. That's what we wanted them to do, take the next step. And so wherever you're going, make sure you're leveraging that point.
Yeah, that's so good, Billy. I love it. The mailers, the signs, whatever we can do to get the gospel out. The world needs more gospel-centered churches. Our communities need more gospel-centered churches. And schools are a great way, especially schools that the parents, their kids are already going there, they're already attending, they're already familiar with it. But getting them in the door so that we can minister to them. So
yeah. And I would say one thing, and don't forget to leverage, especially in our cases where we have a church that's already set up and running, don't forget to leverage the strength of your congregation. Chances are you have a bunch of men and women that are business leaders and are business-minded, entrepreneurial. And the more I think that we can show that we're organized and we have a plan, for me, and everyone's wired differently, but for me, planning down, hey, we're going to have trailers, we're going to have this, and all this is because we want to be efficient. We want to maximize our time doing ministry, not setting up and tearing down. But that comes at a cost. And so I think you're going to have to show the benefit cost analysis, if you will, of why, certain equipment will help you do what you need to do instead of just saying like, oh, we need, $30,000 or whatever. It's like, break it down because you got some leaders in your church right now that may be looking for a way to engage, and this might be their way to engage as well.
Awesome. Billy, let's call that a good episode for now.
Okay.
As always, appreciate you being on the show and sharing your wisdom with us, and look forward to doing it again and seeing how God continues to bless the church there and seeing what we're going to do with our school here and whoever else might be listening, connect with us on that topic as well. So thanks, Billy.
Awesome.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. The Cultivate Church Planting Podcast is part of CGN Media, a podcast network that points to Christ. Check out cgnmedia.org for more great shows and ways to support the ministry.